The distress signal in the distant corners of the galaxy, a race known as the Zorthians, faced a disaster unlike any they had encountered before. Their home planet, Zorthar, was dying. A catastrophic event had caused their world to spiral into ruin. Entire cities had been swallowed by massive sinkholes, and a poisonous gas began to spread through their atmosphere, choking everything in its path. The Zorthians were a powerful species, known across the galaxy for their technological advancements and their might in battle. But now, despite all their strength, they were helpless. The resources they had relied upon for centuries were quickly running out. Their scientists worked around the clock, trying to find a way to reverse the damage, but it was too late. Their world was beyond saving. In a desperate bid for survival, the Zorthians decided to reach out for help. But who could they turn to? The Zorthian leaders gathered in the war room, their faces grim. They looked through the star maps, searching for a civilization that might offer them the aid they so desperately needed. After much deliberation, they chose to send a distress signal to a nearby system they knew had an intelligent species. They had heard rumors about Earth. The humans had always been considered a primitive race, barely advanced beyond their own moon. But the Zorthians were willing to try anything. What else could they do? Earth, despite its flaws, was their best hope for survival. The signal was sent out, drifting across space with the speed of light. It was a simple message, one that would reach Earth in a matter of hours. Please help. Our world is dying. We need assistance. As the message made its way toward Earth, the Zorthians waited. They knew it was a long shot, but what else could they do? They had nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, on Earth, the message was picked up by an advanced communication array. At first, scientists and military officers were confused. Earth had never received a message from another species before. The idea of alien life had always seemed like a distant possibility. No one truly expected it to happen. But here it was, a signal from another world, asking for help. The Earth governments quickly mobilized, assembling a team of the brightest minds to decode the message. As they analyzed the signal, they were shocked to discover that it was genuine. The Zorthians, a species they had never even heard of, were asking for help. Earth had always been seen as a weak, underdeveloped planet by the galactic community. The idea that anyone would reach out to them for aid was almost laughable, but Earth had its own secrets. Over the centuries, humans had quietly developed powerful technologies that the rest of the galaxy was unaware of. They had never needed to show their full strength. Now, with the Zorthian distress signal, Earth's leaders saw an opportunity. An opportunity to prove that they were not the weak species others thought them to be. A decision was made. Earth would respond to the Zorthian distress call, but not with help, as the Zorthians expected. No, Earth's response would be a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was done hiding in the shadows. As the response was prepared, a sense of tension grew. The Earth fleet, though small, was not weak. Humans had developed ships of incredible power, designed not for peaceful exploration, but for war. They had spent years building and perfecting their vessels, ensuring that they could defend their home against any threat. And now that power would be unleashed. The Zorthians, meanwhile, continued to wait. They had no idea what was coming. Their hopes were high, believing that Earth would offer a peaceful solution. They didn't know that Earth had no intention of simply offering aid. What the Zorthians didn't understand was that humans, while they could be kind, were also capable of fierce vengeance. And if anyone dared to underestimate them, they would regret it. Days passed as the Zorthians waited anxiously for Earth's response. They knew they had no time to waste. The damage to their planet was accelerating, and every hour that passed made their situation more dire. They hoped that the humans would act quickly, bringing with them the advanced technology they had so desperately needed for so long. Finally, the day arrived when Earth's response was transmitted. The Zorthians eagerly gathered around their communication devices, expecting a signal that would bring them hope. But what they heard was not what they expected. The message Earth sent was clear, simple, and full of power. We received your message. We are coming, but not to help. Prepare yourselves. The Zorthians froze. They had expected assistance, but this was something else entirely. The words were chilling, and they realized too late that Earth's response was not what they had hoped. For it wasn't a promise of help, it was a warning. The Earth fleet was already on its way, as the Zorthian commanders scrambled to prepare for what was to come. They began to understand the gravity of their mistake. They had thought Earth was just a weak, primitive world, but they had no idea that humanity's strength was not just in their technology, was in their resilience, their willpower, and their willingness to protect their own. The first signs of Earth's fleet appeared on the scanners, far in the distance. The Zorthians now realized that their distress call had not brought the aid they had so desperately hoped for. It had brought something much, much worse, and so the stage was set. The galaxy would never be the same again. The arrival of Earth's fleet. The Zorthians could barely comprehend what was happening. The message Earth had sent wasn't what they expected at all. The words echoed in their minds. We are coming, but not to help. Prepare yourselves. They had hoped for aid, for relief, for a solution to their dying planet. Instead, Earth had sent a warning. The Zorthian commanders tried to dismiss the unease creeping into their hearts. They had dealt with powerful races before, and their forces had always been more than a match for any opponent. But this time, something felt different as they stared at their communication screens. A new signal appeared, one they could not ignore. It wasn't a message. It was a fleet, far off in the distance. The first ships from Earth emerged from the depths of space. Their design was unlike anything the Zorthians had ever seen. The ships were large, dark, and sleek, their hulls glowing with an eerie light. But what struck the Zorthians the most wasn't their size or design, it was the sheer power radiating from each one. These were not mere transport ships. These were warships. The Zorthians' commanders exchanged nervous glances. They had not expected such a powerful response from a species they had considered weak. How could a primitive race like Earth build such advanced warships? It didn't make sense. In their arrogance, the Zorthians had never even considered the possibility that humanity had been hiding such strength as the Earth fleet neared. The Zorthians attempted to make contact again, desperate to avoid a conflict. They sent out another signal, hoping that maybe Earth had simply misunderstood their distress message. We beg you, we need help, they pleaded. Our world is dying. Please help us before it is too late. But no reply came. Instead, Earth's fleet continued to advance. The first ship in the fleet, the Vanguard, led the charge. Its size alone was enough to make the Zorthian fleet look like toys in comparison. It was massive, equipped with weapons so powerful that the Zorthians had never seen anything like them. The ship's engines emitted a deep, resonating hum, almost as if the vessel itself was alive, ready to unleash its fury upon the galaxy behind the Vanguard. Dozens of smaller ships followed in formation, each one more intimidating than the last. The Zorthians watched in horror as the Earth ships moved closer, their weapons systems coming online. In an attempt to assert control, the Zorthians scrambled to prepare for battle. Their fleet, though strong, was nowhere near ready for what Earth had brought. They rushed to arm their weapons and coordinate their defense. But deep down, they all knew they were outmatch. The Earth ships didn't slow down. They didn't hesitate. They were coming in full force, and they had no intention of retreating. As the Zorthian fleet scrambled to position their defenses, Earth's first shots rang out. The Vanguard fired a single, massive energy blast, striking one of the Zorthian warships. The impact was so intense that the Zorthian ship disintegrated in an instant. There was no warning, no time to react. It was simply gonna reduce to nothing but debris. The Zorthians watched in shock as the Earth fleet continued to advance, not a single ship hesitating. The firepower of the Vanguard was unlike anything they had ever faced. The Zorthians had fought countless battles, but this was different. This wasn't a fight. This was an execution. As the Earth fleet drew nearer, Zorthian warships attempted to return fire, but their weapons were no match for the Earth ships. The Vanguard absorbed their blasts like they were nothing, its hull impervious. To the Zorthians' weak attacks, one by one, the Zorthian ships fell. Unable to withstand the relentless onslaught from the humans, panic spread like wildfire among the Zorthian fleet. They had never imagined that their distress signal would lead to their own destruction. The humans, in their silent, determined march toward victory, were showing no mercy. The Zorthians' strategy had been to ask for help, but now they were being crushed under the weight of their own mistake. In the midst of the chaos, the commanders tried to regroup, but it was already too late. Their ships were being torn apart, and their defenses were crumbling under the weight of Earth's might. The Zorthians had thought that Earth would be their savior, but now they realized they had summoned their worst nightmare, far from the battlefield. Back on Earth, a calm silence reigned. The leaders of humanity had been watching the progress of the battle from the command centers. There was no cheering, no celebration, just quiet, measured observation. Earth had made its decision, and now the galaxy would understand the true power of humanity. The Earth fleet, despite its overwhelming might, was not aiming for complete annihilation. The humans wanted to send a message not just to the Zorthians, but to the entire galaxy. They wanted to show that Earth was no longer a weak, defenseless planet. Humanity had hidden its power for far too long, and now it was time for the galaxy to know who Earth really was. As the Zorthian fleet disintegrated around them, the remaining survivors of the Zorthian race began to understand the harsh truth. Earth was not a species to be taken lightly. In fact, they had never been weak at all. Humanity's technology was far beyond what the galaxy had realized, and their will to fight was stronger than anything the Zorthians had ever encountered. The battle raged on, but the Zorthians knew deep down that it was over. They had made the mistake of underestimating Earth, and now they would pay the price. The war begins. The Zorthians were not ready for this. They had been too confident, too sure of their superiority. Earth was supposed to be just a weak, insignificant planet, a species too primitive to even understand the complexities of galactic politics. Now, the galaxy's mightiest empire was crumbling, and the humans had only just begun in the wreckage of their fleet. The remaining Zorthian commanders fought to regroup, their minds racing. Their communications were scattered, their ships in chaos. It wasn't just the power of Earth's weapons that overwhelmed them, it was the sheer tenacity and unpredictability of the human fighters. Every move was calculated, yet every decision was unexpected. The Zorthians couldn't predict Earth's next step, and that made them afraid. The battle was far from over. The surviving Zorthian ships, though beaten, were not yet finished. They rallied what remained of their forces, preparing for one last desperate stand. Their fleets were scattered across the star system, some trying to retreat, others attempting to make a final charge. But Earth's fleet was relentless. The humans had no intention of letting their enemies escape. The vanguard, leading Earth's charge, was still at the forefront. Its weapons glowed with an intense, almost unnatural light as it tore through Zorthian ships. Each blast from the vanguard was a wave of destruction. Zorthian warships tried to return fire, but their weapons barely scratched the surface of the vanguard. It was as if the Earth fleet was invincible, unstoppable. Zorthian commanders sent out one final plea, urging their forces to regroup and fight back. "We must resist. We will not be erased. This is our home," they shouted over the coms, rallying their people. But the Zorthian spirits were faltering. They had underestimated Earth, and now it was too late. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet began to close in on the Zorthian homeworld. The humans weren't just here to defend themselves, they were here to make a statement. Earth's message was clear. The galaxy had no right to ignore humanity any longer. The humans had been underestimated for too long, and now they would prove their power. The Zorthians realized that Earth was not just responding to a distress call. The humans were exacting their revenge, showing the galaxy what would happen to anyone who dared to disrespect them. Humanity had kept their power hidden for centuries, but the veil was lifting now. The galaxy had no idea what they had unleashed by sending that distress signal. The Zorthians began to panic. With their fleet shattered and their homeworld in the sights of Earth's most powerful warships, there was no escaping the consequences of their mistake. They scrambled to deploy their final defense, their last line of hope. But Earth's fleet was already on top of them, cutting through their remaining forces like a blade through paper. One by one, Zorthian ships fell. The few remaining warriors fought with all their might, but it was hopeless. The humans were too powerful, too determined. The Zorthians' weapons couldn't reach Earth's ships, and their ships themselves were no match for the Earth fleets. Firepower. Meanwhile, on the human side, the fleet was operating with chilling precision. Every ship in Earth's arsenal moved in perfect synchronization. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a calculated, cold fury as they dismantled the Zorthian forces piece by piece. The humans weren't angry, they weren't driven by hatred. They were driven by something deeper, a need to prove that they were not to be underestimated. Humanity had always been seen as a peaceful species, but those days were over. As Earth's fleet continued its advance, the remaining Zorthian commanders realized the truth. They had been wrong about Earth. The humans weren't weak. They weren't just survivors, they were warriors. And now they were going to show the galaxy just how deadly Earth could be. At the heart of the battle, Earth's vanguard fired once again. This time, the blast was aimed at the Zorthian capital ship, the last and most powerful vessel they had left. The Zorthians had invested all their remaining resources into this ship, hoping it would turn the tide of the war. But it didn't stand a chance. The explosion was deafening. The Zorthian capital ship, the last hope of their people, was reduced to debris in the blink of an eye. The remaining Zorthian forces were finished. On the battlefield, a strange silence fell. The once mighty Zorthian fleet was gone. The Earth fleet, undefeated and unyielding, had achieved its goal. But the humans did not celebrate. They simply watched, knowing that the battle was over. Their message had been delivered, but for the Zorthians, it was far from over. Those who remained alive were left with one question: why had Earth responded like this? They had only asked for help. Why had the humans chosen to destroy them? The answer, as the survivors would soon learn, lay in the history of humanity. Earth was not a species to be trifled with. It had been crushed, ignored, and underestimated. For far too long, the galaxy had written Earth off as weak, as nothing more than a primitive world. But the humans had been quietly building, waiting for the moment to show the universe just what they were capable of. The war was over, but the message was clear. Earth would no longer be silent. They would no longer hide in the shadows. The galaxy would learn to fear humanity. The final confrontation, the galaxy had never seen anything like this. The Zorthian Empire, once a mighty force that ruled across countless star systems, was now on the brink of total destruction. What remained of their fleet was scattered and broken, their once proud commanders reduced to desperate fugitives. Earth's response had not only shattered their force, it had crushed their very will to fight. The last Zorthian stronghold lay ahead, their home planet, Zor, with their capital ship destroyed and the survivors of their fleet in disarray. The Zorthians had only one option left. They would make their final stand on their own soil. But even as they prepared for what would undoubtedly be their last battle, a deep sense of dread hung in the air. How could they face the might of Earth's fleet now? As the Zorthian commanders huddled in their command center, they discussed their last chance for survival. Earth's fleet, relentless and unstoppable, was closing in. There was no more time to regroup. The Zorthians had one final weapon they had kept in reserve, an ancient superweapon long hidden beneath the surface of their homeworld. It was their last hope, a last-ditch effort to defend their planet and their people. This weapon, however, came at a terrible cost. The Zorthians had built it centuries ago, in the earliest days of their empire's rise. It had the power to annihilate entire fleets in a single strike, but it was so unstable that its use could destroy Zortha itself. Still, desperate times called for desperate measures. With no other choice, the Zorthian commanders gave the order to activate the weapon. On Earth's side, the fleet continued its relentless advance. The Vanguard led the charge, its enormous hull gleaming in the dark void of space, a symbol of humanity's strength and determination. Earth's fleet was now in full formation, ready to finish what they had started. The Zorthians had made a grave mistake, one that they could never undo. The humans were coming, and nothing would stand in their way. But there was a twist in the air. The Zorthians had unleashed their superweapon, a massive energy pulse aimed directly at the Earth fleet. If it hit its mark, it could destroy everything in its path. The Vanguard was the first to detect the weapon's activation. The advanced sensors on the ship picked up the energy buildup, the very same type of signature they had seen on the Zorthian capital ship moments before it was obliterated. The human commanders exchanged grim looks. They knew what this meant. If the weapon fired, the consequences would be catastrophic, but there was no turning back. They had to stop it now. The Earth fleet accelerated toward Zortha, each ship moving at full speed. The Zorthian's superweapon, now fully charged, sent out a pulse of energy that rippled through space, creating a blinding flash of light. The weapon's power was immense, and it seemed as though nothing could stand in its path. But Earth's fleet was ready. The Vanguard, leading the charge, unleashed its own weapon. A beam of concentrated energy erupted from the ship, colliding with the Zorthian superweapon just as it fired. The two forces met in a violent explosion that shook the very fabric of space itself. For a moment, everything was silent. The Zorthians watched in horror as their superweapon's energy was deflected by Earth's attack. The power of the Earth fleet's weapons was far beyond anything they had ever imagined. The Zorthian superweapon, once their last hope, was now nothing more than a lifeless husk in space. In that moment, the surviving Zorthian commanders understood the truth. They had failed. They had gambled everything on a weapon that could not save them, a weapon that had only hastened their doom. The remaining ships of the Zorthian fleet were caught in the aftermath of the explosion, torn apart by the shock waves of the blast. The Vanguard and its fleet moved forward unscathed. Earth's warships were now in position. The final battle was over before it even truly began. The Zorthian fleet had been crushed in a matter of minutes, their final stand utterly futile against the might of humanity. As the last Zorthian ship was destroyed, the remaining survivors had no choice but to surrender. They sent out one last transmission to Earth, a desperate plea for mercy. We were wrong. We underestimated you. Please, spare our people. We surrender. The message was received in silence. Earth's fleet had done what they set out to do. They had sent a message to the galaxy, a message that humanity would no longer be ignored, no longer be treated as weak. The humans had proven themselves. The decision to spare the Zorthian survivors was not an easy one. The human commanders, despite the victory, knew the cost of mercy. They knew that the Zorthians would never forget this moment, that the galaxy would remember how Earth had risen to power in the face of overwhelming odds. But humanity had chosen to show mercy, to prove that they were not simply a species of warriors. They were more than that. They were capable of something even more powerful, the ability to rise above the violence of war and show compassion. And so, with the battle finally over, Earth's fleet pulled back. The surviving Zorthians were left to rebuild, to rethink their place in the galaxy. They would never forget the lesson they had learned. The galaxy had always underestimated Earth, but now they would understand. Earth had emerged not as a weak, forgotten world, but as the true power in the galaxy. The war was over, but the message had been sent. The galaxy would never be the same again.